Recording in progress.
Hello everybody, thank you for watching the replay, if that's what you're watching at the moment. This is the second Q&A and celebration of being HSP session in our HSP Extrovert Awareness Week. So thank you to everybody who has joined me so far. I'm going to do a final video later on which is going to clarify a few things and just tell you where to go to get things and that sort of stuff. But today I just want to clarify, just want to finish up with some other common questions that come up for me, and also to share some of the other feedback I got from the wonderful ladies in my Highly Sensitive Extroverts Bright Sparks free Facebook group. I asked them what they love about being HSP extrovert, given that that's what this week is about. There's two purposes for this week. One is it's a celebration of being HSP extrovert, and secondly, it is a chance to raise awareness, create education for people who are not HSP, but also for HSP extroverts as well, because that's one of the things that I've loved getting out of this week, is seeing some of my ladies who are in my group and they know they're HSP extrovert and they're still learning more about what it means to be HSP extrovert. So that just really warms my heart. And the only way I know that that's happening is because they comment on these videos and they say, hey, I didn't know this, or yeah, this is really cool. So if you are watching this, then please do just say hi, even if you're watching the replay, and let me know where you're watching from. And if you feel comfortable, then I would love for you to share your thoughts on what it is that I'm saying, or anything about HSP Extrovert Awareness Week, because it really does, it might not seem like much when you're just commenting on a video, but it makes such a difference to people like me and my guests, knowing that us giving our time to do these sessions is actually making a difference to people. It seriously does make a huge difference, especially because we're HSP. So we love knowing that we're actually helping people, because that's really important to most HSPs. So anyway, I'm just trying to find where this video might be appearing so that I can actually view the comments. I'm trusting that it is on Facebook somewhere. Here we go. Now I can see it. And somebody is watching me. See, I didn't know that until I looked up the Facebook one. So hello to whoever's there. I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm going to say it's Heather, because Heather has been... Hello, Heather, if it's you. Anyway, say hi if it's not. But I want to give a shout out to Heather actually as well, because she was super organized this week, and when I posted the schedule in the event with all the times of the live sessions, Heather put all of those in her diary, in her calendar, and she has pretty much showed up to, I think, every single one of them. There might have been maybe one that she missed because she had another appointment, but she's catching up on the replays. So massive shout out to Heather, because I think that's such a great commitment for you to do that, and for you to support me in doing this as well, because it's so nice to actually be jumping on here and know that I'm talking to somebody, and then it's not just being recorded for people to watch later. So yeah, big shout out to Heather. Thank you so much for being with me. I know you have had some audio issues, and I remember you saying to me that a lot of the videos sound like I'm rapping, because it just keeps kind of stalling and replaying. So hopefully you'll get hopefully this one will be a little bit easier for you to follow. So anyway, let's get stuck into some more questions and some more celebrations around being HSP extrovert. So as I mentioned, I asked my ladies. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is, if you are watching this and you think you're a HSP extrovert, but you're not in the group, or you think you might be a HSP extrovert, then I'd love to invite you to come and join my free group, which is Highly Sensitive Extroverts Bright Sparks. It's a bunch of absolutely amazing women and we would all love to have you, because being HSP extrovert can be quite lonely in this world, because we are only about 1 in 20 people. So most of the people that join my group end up at some point, if I get a chance to chat to them, they'll say, oh my gosh, like I finally feel like I found my people. And it just gives them, I suppose, hope and relief, and they feel like they actually belong somewhere, because most of us grew up feeling like we didn't belong and that we were a bit different and something was wrong with us. So it's such a relief for a lot of them to come into the group and meet like-minded people who are just like them. So more celebrations. So Peggy, what she likes about being HSP extrovert is the fact that she can get genuine joy in the beauty of nature. So this is one of the things that, when we're focusing on the amazingness of being HSP, is that, yeah, we get this, we have an affinity with nature and an affinity with all living creatures, I think. And so even just taking a walk in nature, if you stop to take a look around, I mean, everybody can appreciate walking in nature, obviously, but HSPs just, we can get this, just these amazing feelings of awe and gratitude and genuine joy, as Peggy said. So thank you for sharing that, Peggy. And Terry shared, I do notice everything. So I talked about that the other day, I think, and if you're interested in where this comes from, I did a video on the DOES criteria, DOES, which are basically the 4 criteria for being HSP. The S is sensitive to subtleties, and that's what Terry is talking about when she says, I do notice everything. So this is a really good thing, because it makes us caring people, it makes us really great friends, because we can pick up when perhaps you're not really having the best day. Even if you're doing your best to put a brave face on, we can pick up on those subtleties, we can pick up on those subtle mood shifts, changes in expression, tone of voice. So that makes us really good friends, because we can, and because we love human connection and we like to go deep with things, where we kind of want to make sure that you're okay and check in, and yeah. But on the flip side of that, I was just thinking, I did a chat in Vanessa Talbot's Coaches of Change Makers Step into the Spotlight group yesterday, I think it was. I do a regular guest expert appearance in there about HSP extroverts, and we were talking about narcissists. So in terms of, I do notice everything that Terry shared, people who don't have the best intentions, they don't like that about us, because we can pick up on shiftiness and perhaps not so much truthfulness in people. One of the challenges that HSPs have, though, is we ignore that intuition. We ignore that sense that something's a bit off, and we give people the benefit of the doubt. So that's one of the things that I work a lot with my clients and in our Connection Corner group membership, is how we can actually start to trust our intuition and use it to help ourselves, so that we don't get sucked into these energy vampires or narcissists or people that just take advantage of us. So that's just, yeah, the flip side of that do notice everything is that sometimes we have been trained to ignore our superpowers, so to speak. Just going to make sure there's no comments. Yep. And Alicia shared being able to sense things when emotions of others changes. So that's pretty much what I was just talking about. So when other people are struggling, we're really good at picking up on that. And it really is, I believe, another one of our superpowers. And those who followed me for a while will know that I think we have a lot of superpowers. So it's about, yeah, learning to celebrate that and live into those strengths, whilst at the same time overcoming some of the challenges, because we live in a world that doesn't really, isn't really conducive to our brains and our nervous systems. But I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later when I cover one of these questions that has come up. Shane shared that, she said, I like to create a warm environment for people when I invite them over. Again, this is another really, really cool thing about HSP HSPs in general, but we're talking about HSP extroverts. And it's that care for others and that genuine interest in ensuring other people are okay and ensuring that other people are comfortable. So I think that's what Shane's getting at there. So she's really conscious of creating an environment that is welcoming and warm so that people feel comfortable when they're in her presence. And I think that's a beautiful thing to be able to do. Helen says, enjoying my curiosity in people, the world, and its amazingness and the beauty and wonder of nature. So again, here comes the nature thing. And I love that bit about enjoying my curiosity in people. And I think this one comes from, this is probably more, I would suggest, a HSP extrovert thing, because our extrovert brain craves external stimulation. That's what an extrovert brain needs to kind of fill it up and give it energy and recharge our batteries, while at the same time HSP side of us then can get overwhelmed, overstimulated, and need some downtime. So I've talked about this a lot through the week, that contradictory nature of the two sides of our personality. So I think the HSP extroverts have that natural curiosity in people. We want to get to know people. We want to learn about them. We want to have those deep connections with them. So the deep connections is a generic HSP thing. All HSPs enjoy having deep connections with people. But the HSP extroverts, I think, is probably where the natural curiosity comes from, because our extrovert brain wants to have novel experiences and novel conversations and have that external stimulation by chatting with other people. So that's the end of my list of all the things that my ladies love about being HSP extrovert. If you want to hear more, check out the Q&A number 1 that I did earlier in the week, and I go through some of the other comments that the ladies made, and obviously different questions than what I'm covering today. So the questions I did in the previous Q&A were, can men be HSP extrovert? I talked about HSP, sensory processing sensitivity and sensory processing disorder. I talked about hypersensitivity versus highly sensitive person. And I talked about empaths and HSPs. So if you're interested in any of that, head back to the live Q&A number 1. So today I've just got 3 questions I want to go through. So this one probably isn't going to be as long as the other one, unless somebody joins me live and has a question. So whoever that is that's live, hopefully, if it's you, Heather, hopefully the audio is working for you this time. But if that's you, please say hi. So the first question I wanted to chat about today is, am I too sensitive? This is a common thing that comes up for all HSPs, I think. But yeah, I don't know if it's more so for HSP extroverts. I think all HSPs would have been accused of being too sensitive at least one point in their life, if not hundreds of points in their life. But I think the challenge that HSP extroverts have is we actually often feel like we're too much for people. We can, because our natural enthusiasm and excitement can be quite confronting for people, and sometimes when we meet them we can feel them backing away. But I did a video on that. That's on my YouTube channel. If you head to my YouTube channel, I think it's the main video that starts playing when you first go there. So today I wanted to talk about, am I too sensitive? Now this kind of relates to the difference between hypersensitivity and being a HSP. So please go back and listen to that, the live Q&A number 1, where I talked about the difference between hypersensitivity and high sensitivity, because I went into a lot more detail than what I am going to go into today. So am I too sensitive? I think there's 2 answers to this question. 1 is maybe you are. 2, you're definitely not. So I'll explain what I mean by that. So when I talked about hypersensitivity versus highly sensitive person, I talked about the fact that HSPs can be hypersensitive. And hypersensitivity in a nutshell is not people who haven't learnt to manage their emotions effectively. So their emotions pretty much take over them and they don't have control over them. They have meltdowns, they have histrionic fits, and the emotions basically just take them over. So some HSPs are hypersensitive. And so if that's you and you can relate to what I'm saying, then I would say sometimes perhaps you are too sensitive. But the reason I am sharing that and reason I'm saying that is not because I want to upset you or not because I want to have a go at you. It's because I want to encourage you that there's things you can do to ensure that you're not hypersensitive, because being hypersensitive is exhausting for starters, plus it can be really detrimental to your life and to your relationships. But the cool thing is that you can learn to not be hypersensitive, and because I think the difference is the E in the DOES criteria stands for emotional responsiveness and reactivity. So our emotions are bigger than non-HSPs, but hypersensitivity is kind of like when that's taken one step further, where we're not in control of them either. So they kind of take over us. So that's the bit that can be changed. So our emotions will always be big. Our emotions will always be more pronounced than non-HSPs. But I encourage you that if you do notice hypersensitivity is one of your challenges, then I really, really encourage you to do some work to overcome that. And I would be more than happy to help you do that, because it really is life-changing if you can start to manage your emotions more effectively. So that's the answer of, am I too sensitive? Maybe you are. So if you are displaying signs of hypersensitivity, then I would say yes, perhaps you are too sensitive. But normally when we're accused of being this, it's just normal HSP emotions. So if you aren't exhibiting signs of hypersensitivity and somebody accuses you of being too sensitive, I would say that that's saying more about them than it is about you. So I encourage you to not take it personally, because most of the time when people say stuff to us or about us, it's a greater reflection of them and their issues than it is about us. And it is hard to not take things personally, and I'm not suggesting it's an easy thing to do, but that's also why I created the training course about it. So I've got a mini training course called Build Your HSP Armor, and that actually helps teach you some tools to start to not take things personally. I've also just released a new module, which is how to deal with something when it is personal. So somebody is deliberately attacking you or being nasty or having a go at you. So hopefully that answers the question about, am I too sensitive? Hypersensitivity, maybe you are being too sensitive. If you're not hypersensitive, then I would say then it's the other person's issue, because it also depends on your definition of too. Am I too sensitive? So non-HSPs, they're the ones who usually accuse us of being too sensitive, whereas I would say they're not sensitive enough. That's probably my standard reaction to, if somebody said that to me, I'd say, well, maybe you're not sensitive enough. And that's not really because I don't like non-HSPs. It's just kind of like a way to kind of say, well, hang on a minute, like, yeah, don't have a go at me, because this is how I am. I'm a HSP. I can't help my sensitivity unless it's hypersensitivity. So that's what I wanted to clarify with that, is it depends on your definition of too. I would suggest that a lot of the world is not sensitive enough, and that's partly why we're having a lot of the challenges and issues in today's society, is because people are not sensitive enough, they're not caring enough, they're not empathetic enough towards their fellow humans, and that's something where HSPs shine in that particular area. So that was a very long answer to that question. So now I'm going to go to a question from Leslie. Thanks, Leslie, for this. So she said, I've been pondering what drives me and how I've always felt it's very different to others. So somehow I was wrong. which is classic HSP. We tend to kind of go, well, it must be me, which makes sense because we're the minority. So the majority of people are not like us. Leslie goes on to say, others seem more driven by our modern ideas of success. It would be good to talk about that and how we can really tap into it and not lose sight of it when surrounded by structures and systems that don't necessarily support or encourage it. So what she's talking about then is what drives us as opposed to what drives a lot of society. And I asked Leslie to clarify this a bit just to make sure that we were on the same page. And I said, well, what do you think drives us? She said, I think we may be driven by the greater good, caring for others in different ways, instead of the modern individualistic concept of being driven by personal success with money and status. So I agree with this. I think that HSPs, just by the way their brains are wired, we're born this way, is we're very naturally caring people. We're obviously sensitive. Our nervous systems are sensitive. Our emotions are sensitive. So I think what I would like to say on this is don't lose sight or don't lose touch with what makes you you. So we're under a lot of pressure to toe the line in society. We're conditioned to think busy equals successful. The busier you are, the more successful you are. The more money you have, the better person you are. The better job you have, the better person you are. And I agree with Leslie. I think that that's not helpful, and that's one of the big issues in today's society. Is it is very individualistic. It is all about personal success, money, status, as opposed to being a good person. And I think that's what drives HSPs a lot of the time, is being a good person, caring about other people. And it's not to say that we're not interested in success for ourselves, because I know for me, I'm driven to make this business succeed, but I think here's the difference. So I'm driven to make this business succeed because I want to help as many HSP extroverts out there as I can. Whereas a non-HSP maybe, and not all of them are like this, but there are people out there who, having the same sort of business, coaching for example, might be driven by, I want to make as much money as I can. Now, don't get me wrong, I like money and I don't mind if I've got a bit extra money, but that isn't what is the driving force behind what I'm doing. And I kind of feel like that's almost evidenced in this week as a classic example. Like, I've put this week on for free. I haven't charged people for it because I'm trying to educate, I'm trying to raise awareness, I'm trying to reach more HSP extroverts. So I've invested my money in Facebook ads to try and reach more people, to try and help more HSP extroverts. And it's not just HSPs who are like this, because the group that I regularly appear in, that I mentioned before, Vanessa's group, that's very much full of heart-centered coaches. And there are a lot of heart-centered business owners out there who are not necessarily HSP. So it's not only HSPs who are driven by the greater good, but I think as a general rule, we are. So what can we do about that, given that we kind of recognize we are driven by something different? Well, this is where I get excited. I encourage all of us, let's buck the trend. Let's let our inner rebels out, because I honestly think that most HSP extroverts have an inner rebel inside us, and I love it when they come out. So I would encourage us all to let our inner rebels out, buck the trend of money, status, busyness is the key. Like, let's make time freedom. Let's make less busy the status symbol. So, and because if you think back in time, and I'm going to digress here from my inner rebel, let's start a movement thing. But if you think back in time to my history is terrible. I don't know how many years ago, but if you think about like the times of the British aristocracy, for example, the most successful people in society were the least busy. So the people who were the busiest were the poor people, the people that kind of lived paycheck to paycheck, lived on the edge of poverty. They were the busiest because some of them were working all hours of the day and night. Their health suffered. They couldn't afford to stop. Whereas the aristocracy, they were sitting around having tea parties, they were learning to crochet, they were playing the piano, they were the least busy. And for some reason, we've flipped that on its head now, and we're kind of being conditioned in society that if you're not busy, A, you're not successful, and B, you're lazy. So I hate that because I just think it's so unhelpful, particularly for HSPs, because our nervous systems are not set up to be busy, work 80 hours a week. It is just not going to work for us, and we are going to burn out. We are going to end up with chronic illnesses, which is what happened to me. So let's buck the trend. Let's start a movement where our inner rebels come out. We learn to live life on our terms. We learn to live life the way our brains will flourish and our brains will thrive. So let's start a movement to make that happen. Who's with me? If you're watching this, let me know below if you want to start a movement with me and just start to live life for us and the way that works for our brains. And who cares what society thinks? And let's hope that the movement grows and we can start to, influence change, because I think that would be really, really exciting. Now, according to Facebook, I've got 2 people watching me. So if that's you, please say hi. I'd love to know who's there. Let me know what you think about everything I'm saying. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know below. Love to hear your thoughts. So I've got one more question I'm going to cover today. And this one's for Jill. She said a question for her would be how to explain to family and friends that sometimes I need some time out to process things, or because I'm on sensory overload, I need time out to de-stress. Great question, because this is another example. Oh, it's Melody. Hi, Melody. So Melody's going to be joining me soon when I finish this. We're going to be doing the final HSP Extrovert success story, and that's the final live session for the week. So thanks for joining me, Melody. My phone keeps telling me my internet's a bit unstable, but hopefully it's working okay. So in terms of Jill's question, how to explain to family and friends, I think first point is it's best to talk to them before we reach the point of overload or overstimulation or needing time out, because we're going to be better able to articulate that this is something that we need on a regular basis if we're not already in that space of overstimulation, overload, or overwhelm. Because when we get to that space, that's when we're teetering on the verge of perhaps a bit of a mini meltdown or a big meltdown. So I would suggest talk to them before that. So it would be something to, if it's somebody who perhaps doesn't seem to understand and it's causing a bit of a rift in your relationship, then one day when everything's calm and there's no kind of tension between you, I'd suggest you just sit down and you have a chat with them. You just say, hey, I just want to share a couple of things with you about what it means to be HSP, so that we can understand each other better, and that it just will help our relationship be a little more smooth sailing. And then I would just explain it as best you can. Feel free to use my videos. And if the other thing I wanted to say is, if they're not willing to understand, to accommodate, or to accept that this is what you need, then that becomes a boundary issue, because boundaries are about protecting ourselves from emotional harm. So if somebody's not accepting that this is what you need time out, if they're giving you a hard time about it, or if they're taking it personally, then it's time to perhaps implement a boundary. And part of the boundaries process is to educate the other person. So that's why I'm suggesting have a chat with them when everything's calm, and just say, I mean, the simplest way to say it, if you're looking for actual words to use, the simplest way to say it, I would suggest, is HSP's nervous systems are more reactive than others, the non-HSPs. Therefore, we get overstimulated much more easily and much quicker than non-HSPs. What this means is the best thing I can do for myself and everyone around me is to take myself away, have some time out, recharge my batteries, allow my nervous system to come back down to normal. It's nothing personal. It's actually something that I need to do to respect myself and my needs. So I hope you can understand that. Simple. As I said, you can use my videos if you want. So I would suggest, and this is again why I created this HSP Extrovert Awareness Week, is because I want you guys to be able to use these videos and these sessions to be able to help educate your loved ones, family and friends. Hi Carolina, just saw you join us as well. So yeah, use my videos. And the reason I broke them down, you would have seen I've been posting this in the event, little snippets of, put all together, they actually make up my HSP Extrovert Discovery info session, but I've actually split them up into smaller chunks so that they're easier for your loved ones to sit down and watch maybe just one chunk. Because the HSP Extrovert Discovery info session is about 90 minutes. So I think that to ask one of your loved ones to sit down and watch a 90-minute video about you, they might not be very keen to do that. It's like when you try and show your family and friends your holiday pictures. Nobody's interested in your holiday pictures except for you, which is quite disappointing because we're usually really excited about our holiday pictures, but really nobody's that interested. So it's the same with the discovery session. So I thought if I chopped it up into more bite-sized chunks, then that might be more helpful for HSP extroverts to show those chunks to their family and friends. So in this particular case, I would show them the does video, which is the D, the O, the E, and the S. That's the longest one, I think, because that's about 30 minutes. I think all the others are only about 10, 15 minutes. So I would show them that. And the other thing is, if they're not willing to watch and learn about you, then that says a lot about the relationship, how much of a give and take relationship it is. Because if they really care about you, then they will be open to learning and understanding what makes you tick and how the two of you can work together to ensure you have a much more stable, helpful, healthy, fulfilling relationship. And if they're not willing to do that, then again, that's potentially a boundaries issue. And it may be that the best thing you can do is to start to put some boundaries in place and perhaps distancing yourself a little bit from that relationship. So Jill, I hope that answers your question. Leslie, I hope that answers your question as well. If any other people watching this have come up with questions, please drop them below and I'll be happy to come back and answer them. If you have any thoughts about what I've said, please let me know too. But I think I'm pretty much going to wrap it up there because I've come to the end of the questions that have come up and the celebratory statements as well. So yeah, I'll just check the comments to make sure that nobody's asked me a question. So we've got Janine on with us, Melody, Carolina, and Shane. Hi Shane. So thank you everybody for watching. Please let me know your thoughts. As I said at the beginning of the video, even if you're watching the recording, it really, really, really makes my day when people comment and say, thank you, this was great, just so that I know, because otherwise it's hard to tell whether people have even seen the video, let alone whether it's been helpful or not. So I sincerely appreciate any comments that you would be comfortable to drop below. If you're not comfortable sharing your thoughts or whatever, please just write hi or replay or whatever it is that you're comfortable doing, just so that I know that you've watched it. That would be really, really cool. So that's it from me. Stay tuned. In 10 minutes, we're going to be going live again with Melody for our final HSP Extrovert success story. And then later on after that, I'm just going to do one final video to wrap up HSP Extrovert Awareness Week and kind of do some logistical stuff about what happens next, the easiest way to watch everything, how it's all working, because I think being HSP, a lot of people may be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of stuff that I've put in the HSP Extrovert Awareness Week event. So I'm going to give you some tips in my final video. So thanks again, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed the week, and I might see you all in about 10 minutes if you want to join us again to meet Melody and hear what she has to say. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.